I remember all that traffic.
Yeah, we're still.
Okay, we're on. We're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks here on a given Wednesday. How do I know it's Wednesday? Because it's Energy Wednesday, and every Energy Wednesday is Wednesday. Now there's Sharon Moriwaki. She's right over there. She's my co-host for this show. The show, of course, is Hawaii, the state of clean energy, exploring, advancing, fixing, discussing, solving, identifying problems every Wednesday about energy. And Patrick Takahashi is joining us. We are delighted, honored to have him here. He is a director emeritus of HNEI, that's Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, which is a very important organization in the landscape of clean energy in Hawaii. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Thank you, Gene.
So nice to have you.
My pleasure.
So first, tell us who you are. Tell us how you got into the studio. Who let you in?
Well, I bothered you for a minute there, but let me start with 3 books I recently wrote, and I'm going to give you one.
Thank
Simple
you.
Solutions for Planet Earth. This is what I did for all my professional life. It's on energy and the environment. My second book was Simple Solutions for Humanity. What I didn't cover in there, you'll find here. I thought I'd write a second book on what I don't know. So
Great.
this has to do with religion, has to do with eternal life, and so forth. My third book, which I'll give to Sharon if you don't have it yet, is Simple Solution Essays. And what this is at that time, a couple of years ago, it's a compilation of all my Huffington Post articles. I've written more than 100, but these are some of them. So Sharon,
Thank you.
that's for you.
Wow.
So let me start at the beginning, for me.
I warned you there'll be cross-examination at the end.
I was born in Queens Hospital.
Whoa! This is going to be a long show.
Grew up
Only
in,
an hour, Patrick.
grew up in Kaka'ako, went to school at
Kaka'ako.
Central Intermediate, right down the way here.
Okay.
And graduated from McKinley High School.
All right.
Then I went to Stanford, and when I came back, well, in the senior year, all my classmates, they were joining the Peace Corps. It was a big deal in those days, and
That was in my senior year also.
I didn't want to make $95 a month to be thrown into a third world jungle. So I decided,
Get parasites, yeah.
is this why you are what you are? So I thought I'd do something similarly conscientious. So I decided to come back to Hawaii, work for the sugar industry, and I started with seed brewer at the Hutchison Sugar Company on the Big Island. Naalehu is a southernmost community of the United States. In 1962, more than 50 years when I started there was no radio in the daytime. But my first
All
job,
they had was the Shirokawa Inn. Do you remember the
I
Shirokawa Inn?
remember Nissa Shirakawa, he was a friend of mine. So my first job was in biomass engineering. After that, Seabrewer actually, amazingly enough, sent me to graduate school. They said, and they paid my salary if I went to LSU in Baton Rouge because they had a sugar program. So the first year I was there, I said, for just a couple more years I can get a PhD. Why don't I stay there? And they said, no, we don't need PhDs in the sugar industry. So, but it's a
Industry.
but tell you what, stay. When you come back, do something for us. And so they cut off my salary, but big deal. I came back and started working at the University of Hawaii in 1972. Well, that's again more than 40 years. And my first real activity had to do with geothermal energy. The Hawaii Geothermal Energy Project was formed. We actually drilled to a depth of 6,140 feet, hit the hottest geothermal well in the world in those days, and produced 3 megawatts. I mean, that's amazing to start a project and actually produce something. Unfortunately, it got hung up by people who didn't
Cultural concerns.
like what was being done.
Yeah.
So it took a long time for that technology to get going. So therefore, let's see, 1974 is when the first energy crisis came. And John Shoup, who was the Dean of Engineering, was asked by Governor Ariyoshi then, do something about the energy crisis. So he convened 10 of his faculty. I happened to be the newest because I had just joined. And he had 10 topics. And each of us chose a topic. And the only one left for me, and I'm a biochemical engineer, was wind power. So I said, okay, I'm now a wind expert. And it turned out that as I looked into it, wind power makes sense for Hawaii because we have these amplification of the winds because of the
Comes
mountains.
through, yeah, focused,
And,
yeah.
and the power varies with the cube of the velocity. So you want to amplify it. And so I found my way on a trip to Washington, D.C. to get the pre-Department of Energy, which was the Energy Research and Development Agency in those days, to listen to me. And but before I went there, it turned out I had a friend in the University of Miami who was holding the first meeting of hydrogen enthusiasts. So I went to the first meeting of hydrogen. So after that, I went to Washington, D.C., met with Lou DeVone, who was running the wind program, and I told him that Hawaii is starting a wind program. And he smiled and reached back in his bookcase and brought out this almanac that said that Hawaii has the worst wind power in the United States. And I said, where were these wind measurements taken? He said, oh, airports. But, but you're not supposed to build windmills at airports.
Nobody would let you.
And he agreed with me. So he said, tell you what, why don't, on the way back to Hawaii, next week there's the American Solar Energy Society meeting in Colorado, Denver. Why don't you drop by? There's a wind division and talk to them, get some help. And so I did. In those days you could change flights with impunity. And I showed up a little late. The wind division had started meeting. It was dark, room of 75. And at one point I raised my hand and I told them that Lou DeVone asked me to come and seek help from you because Hawaii is going to start a wind program. And the chairman was someone named Frank Eldridge, who had written the book on wind power. By the end of the session, they elected me chairman of the wind division. So it just shows you, if you say things the right or wrong way, you can get elected into anything. What I did, though, is I recruited Frank to come to Hawaii to help us. And he and others, the meteorology department, others, really got our wind program going. I really did very little. But armed with that, in the 74 to 79 period, I happened to...
This was Kahuku, right? It was
well, no,
Kahuku.
initially, yeah, the first big one, the Boeing one, the 3 megawatt, 2 megawatt was at Kahuku.
Yeah.
So Frank had a lot to do with, getting that going, at least, the measurements. At one point, I decided, what is the ultimate energy? What is the ultimate? It has to be fusion. After all, the stars do it, or the sun does it. Why not work on fusion? So I actually
Tell the people what it is.
Fusion is a combination of hydrogen isotopes like deuterium and tritium. When you combine them, you form helium and energy. Okay, this is what the stars do, and so it's universal.
It's not nuclear.
It's nuclear, but it's nuclear fusion, not nuclear fission. Nuclear fission
Doesn't blow
is
things up.
plutonium and uranium.
No
breaking apart.
radioactivity.
The radioactivity is much less fearsome than plutonium, which lasts for 100,000 year half-life. Tritium is only 12 years.
So is it safer? Safer fusion is
It's safer, but more than that is that it's the ultimate form. There is more hydrogen in the universe. I think something like 90% of the universe is hydrogen. And it's a long story as to how that happened, but it happened after the Big Bang. Anyway, so I went to work for Edward Teller at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory.
Teller, did you say?
Edward Teller, the hydrogen
Edward
bomb
Teller?
guy.
You work for Edward
Yeah,
Teller?
Yeah.
And you're talking to us?
Well, you got to stoop every so often. And I worked on fusion for a little bit, and his big deal was laser fusion. He thought that that was the answer as opposed to the tokamak, magnetic confinement. Initial confinement had more potential, and if you go to Cadarache in France, there is a big tokamak experiment called ITER now going on, where most of the fusion funds are being spent, actually. The laser pathway today is not looking that great, and when I was there in the 70s, it looked like we never developed the laser for the operation for another 50 years, so then I pulled out of that. But in the meantime, at HNEI, I was in charge of a group computer modeling effort, and we looked at the energy self-sufficiency potential for each island. And you can go back to HNEI's annals and find a study that was done for each island. in the 70s. But when you compile all that into one list of bullets, this is what we determined. At some point in the future, renewable electricity will be a given. Once the price of oil got high enough, once the technologies got developed, electricity, because we have such a great abundance of this natural gift, will make it. And it's slowly happening. We were worried about ground transportation because gasoline and oil, you know, the energy crisis had come. The second one had not hit yet. We thought actually that biomass gasified into methanol had the best potential for Hawaii. In other words, methanol to replace gasoline.
You should talk to the PUC.
Well,
Never mind.
I have, and the Department of Energy and everybody else. But it turns out that there's one other great advantage of methanol, and this is a fuel cell car will take it 5 times further than any electric vehicle, you know, with lithium batteries, which is the last battery. And so why not a fuel cell vehicle? It turns out that methanol, which is the simplest alcohol,
A fuel cell fuel.
Really, the simplest fossil fuel liquid is the only liquid that can be directly processed by a fuel cell. So the direct methanol fuel cell is a key, you might say, to ground transportation. Unfortunately, soon after that, ethanol was being pushed by the farm lobby, and the farm lobby effectively killed any R&D on methanol. They were just afraid of it. And so the direct methanol fuel cell was never developed. And so you can put it aside for now. But the third bullet that we thought maybe was the most important in the long term of Hawaii was that this is an economy dependent on tourism. What if the price of oil became so high, tourists will stop coming here? So we thought, what about a hydrogen jetliner? Because that made all the technical sense in the world, being the lightest element and all that. And so I was effectively, when the second energy crisis hit in 1979, I was effectively sent to work for Senator Matsunaga in Washington, D.C. And I helped write the first hydrogen bill. And this bill became the Matsunaga Act, which set up a major hydrogen program. There was a point actually about 10 years ago when the budget for hydrogen was actually bigger than the budget for solar energy. And that had to do with a lot of the efforts that we did, because in 1979 the budget for hydrogen was zero. And during the 3-year period I worked in the Senate, I also helped write the first OTEC bill, which this is almost funny. In 1979, I don't think I wrote that, but in the bill, the Matsunaga bill, is a clause that says that in 1999 there will be 10,000 megawatts of OTEC. 1999 came around, as you know, and it was zero. 2014 today, it's zero. So is that option dead? No. See, the problem with energy and renewable energy, most of it, is that everything is too big. A windmill costs millions of dollars, so anytime you put one in, it's a big investment. An OTEC operation that is large enough will cost $1 billion. How many people have billions of dollars to invest for something that's
How many
not
states?
invested?
How many legislators in square buildings?
Yeah, well, you too. So anyway, that's one of the disadvantages of renewable energy. They don't get developed because they're risky, they're unproven, and many of them are very expensive. Your iPhone, for example, has been through 1,000 iterations in the laboratory. By the time you get it, it works. This takes time.
This is really an interesting point you raised, Pat. And we can take a break now. But when we come back, I'd like to explore it further. Sure. Namely, you know, the synchronization of the research and the market.
Yeah.
Because if you can have a wonderful idea, great technology, and if you don't put it together in the right time, and you don't market it, then the market doesn't get it. And sometimes the market winds up getting the wrong thing. And I'd like to explore that with you right after this. That's Patrick Takahashi. He's Director Emeritus of HNEI, that's the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute. He was there at the beginning. This is Think Tech Talks in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. And we're asking the question of Patrick today, is Hawaii on the track, the right track to reach its goal of clean energy? And this is not a rhetorical question. This is a serious question. We'll be right back after this break.
I'm Hong Jiang. I'm hosting Tuesdays Asia in Review at Think Tech Hawaii between 4 to 5 p.m. In my shows, we bring to you important issues and events in Asia, issues related to the culture, society, the environment, and history. We want you to be more connected to events happening in Asia and in the world. So see you there.
Aloha, I'm Maria Kashem of Think Tech Hawaii, and I want to tell you about our Think Tech talk shows. If you didn't know it, Think Tech streams video and audio for all of its shows live on the internet from 2 to 5 p.m. every weekday afternoon, and we replay them all night long on Ustream.tv. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on Think Tech. I'm Maria Kashem, and I'll see you there.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks. I'm Jay Fidel and my inimitable co-host, Sharon Moriwaki, right over there. And in the middle of us is Patrick Takahashi, Director Emeritus of HNEI, Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, and he was there, God, at the formation period. You know,
Before the formation.
Before the formation.
Pre-formation.
And he was in the right time and right place to see this all emerging as a matter of science and technology and into the market. And he can give us he is giving us tremendous perspective on clean energy in Hawaii and everywhere. And the question really we put to him is, are we on the right track to get there, to get to clean energy in Hawaii? And the answer is we're not really sure. We're gonna address this further. But you know, I was talking before the break about whether we are really synchronized here, because we have some great technologies that haven't gone anywhere. And you know, you wonder what the barrier is. And then we have some technologies that are, you know, maybe not as great, not as astonishing, and they've gone miles, and they dominate the landscape sometimes. And how, you know, do you agree with that? And what is the phenomenon like in the larger sense? How is it affecting our pathway to clean energy?
Well, that's the flaw, in a way, and the misfortune of renewable energy. Many of the technologies are just too large and expensive for our current free enterprise system to handle. Who's going to come up with the first $1 billion to build the first OTEC plant? It's a huge, huge issue. Related to that is that we make fun of energy taking forever to develop, whereas your iPhone you keep changing every 6 months just about. And the reason is because that's small, it's marketable, and there's a system how that can be sold. And so we really have to rethink what we want to do as humanity if we want to proceed with renewable energy. It's all linked into climate change, which is an amorphous issue. Is coal all that bad or not? Is nuclear as dangerous as people say? Because you can eat plutonium and you live, you know. And so all these options are being faced by us. Hawaii is so blessed though with the renewables that it seems a shame to keep importing fossil fuels for the rest of our existence, or to bring in nuclear power when we have the sun and the wind and the waves and the plants growing. So
but, you know, it seems to me that if you were king, you would make some pretty dramatic changes. So that's why I think at this point in the show, we need to make you king.
Okay.
We need to give you, you know, complete power.
Right.
And take it from where it is now, which is, you know, a little bit off kilter, and some technologies would maybe shouldn't be so dominant, you know, are, and other technologies which are fabulous technologies and never got into the marketplace and have no real prospect right now of getting in the marketplace. What do you do to change that, Patrick?
Here's my current assessment. I've been retired. I'm in my 15th year of retirement. I still have an office on campus, and I go in and I talk to people.
That's when life begins, don't you
But
think?
essentially, I've had 15 years to think about what I did, what we did, and what it is today. And are we on track let me put it this way. Gasoline in Hawaii costs 15% more than gasoline in the United States. And people complain, right? Electricity in Hawaii is 300% of electricity in the United States, 36 cents a kilowatt hour versus 12 cents a kilowatt hour for the nation. So therefore it does make sense to do what we've been doing, which is to focus on electricity. It doesn't make as much sense to go hog wild on ground transportation at this point by finding biofuels. There's another reason why biofuels are not working, because they're just not amenable to commercialization at this stage. Someday, maybe, and therefore universities and national laboratories should do the research, but don't hold your breath for the early commercialization of jet fuel from algae. It's going to take time. Do the research. But coming back to electricity, so therefore, is it wrong that Hawaii, and really the world as a whole, is only focusing on basically 1/3 of the energy consumption, which is electricity? There's still 2/3. I mean, we're not doing anything, for example, for the future of aviation. Now, this is Hawaii's
Lifeblood.
hugest issue, because if the oil price doubles and tourists stop coming to Hawaii because of the price of the ticket, our unemployment rate will zoom to 50% or some ridiculous level. And if it stays at that price for any length of time, then I fear the worst. The question though is, can we do everything at once? And the answer is no. Hawaii cannot develop a next generation aviation system. We're too small. We cannot be the lead for, say, the direct methanol fuel cell for methanol, because we're a tiny state. So
And the costs of research are in the billions.
billions, tens of billions,
And a long time.
and takes
we,
time.
we don't have the economic power to do that.
You have to be realistic. Hawaii is doing what we're doing. So, can anyone criticize what we're doing? Of course, you can criticize, but we're doing what we can. Our government, our society has different kinds of priorities. Crime is important. Education is important. The military is important. Energy becomes and global warming, even worse, becomes a tertiary consideration, because in the case of global warming, you don't really feel the temperature and sea level change at all. I mean, it gets hot and cold, hot and cold. Sometimes it's too cold. So people don't take it too seriously, and therefore the fossil fuel companies have a free rein in managing what gets done. When it comes to energy in Hawaii, though, what can we really do? What else can we do that is more than what we're doing today? And after thinking about it for all these years, I've come to a conclusion that there is not much more we can do. We tried. When the Matsunaga effort with hydrogen was initiated in the 80s, we actually got the Department of Defense and NASA to start the National Aerospace Plane, which is supposed to be run by hydrogen. That will lead someday to a next generation hydrogen plane. Unfortunately, there were too many problems. The project was abandoned. And so, as far as Hawaii and the future of tourism, not knowing the price of oil, it's a huge worry.
Yeah.
Worry. There's
all the other issues aside, that one thing could sink us.
It absolutely could, and there's nothing we can do about it. Now, there was a point, actually, 6 years ago, you might say, when President Obama became president, and Danny Inouye was in charge of appropriations, there was a sense that maybe two Hawaii people can select Hawaii as the test case for the future of aviation, and maybe the DOD and transportation and NOAA could develop some kind of next generation flying craft, not for today, but certainly for 35 years from now. That never happened. No one really tried that hard, although I tried a little bit. I was retired by
But
then.
am I right to say that right now, there's no movement in that area?
Nothing has happened. The only thing I know is there's a guy named Rinaldo Bertocco who has started a company
I know
called...
him.
Yeah, that's
You met him. You met him.
Yeah.
Is it San Francisco? What is this company?
Business Academy or
Yeah.
something. Because
Yeah, yeah.
World Business Academy.
I'm part of the World Business Academy, so I
Yeah.
know them very well.
Yeah.
Rinaldo has a company now called H2 Clipper. And initially, when he was coming around Hawaii to talk about this hydrogen craft, we wanted to call it the Hawaii Hydrogen Clipper because we wanted Hawaii to be the place where it'll get going. He's actually started a company. He's talked to some DoD people who seem interested. It's not a fast-flying plane. It's a dirigible. But
As long as it doesn't blow up.
Yeah.
no,
The
I mean,
hydrogen.
here's this concept which kind of makes sense. It goes 350 miles an hour, which is much faster than a 50-mile-per-hour dirigible that you see at football games. So it goes fast enough so that if you leave, say, Los Angeles at 10 o'clock in the morning, you can get here, within the same late afternoon. So, it's workable. And then, since it's powered by hydrogen, he wants these devices to be fueled by hydrogen developed through wind power and OTEC and photovoltaics and so forth, which he can then ship to the mainland, take some off, and then come back with the remainder. So he sees his overall economy for Hawaii as ideal for his needs. So, keep an eye on this dirigible, even though it sounds like going back to the Hindenburg and, all about what that disaster was.
I worry about the weather. Here we live in a world where climate change is changing everything,
Yeah.
and you can't, have any real reliance on good weather. And take a dirigible up there, even if it doesn't burn and sink, that dirigible could be thrown off course by a lot, by bad weather.
On the other hand, you have mathematical, satellite readings and everything, and you can avoid storms. For the same reason, ocean thermal energy conversion is going to be difficult because there are hurricanes and things. And so putting a 1,000 megawatt OTEC plant ship, say, on a Blue Revolution grazing platform, which is what my biggest interest is in now, because if you look at the future of Hawaii and where we could head, what other economic pathway is there? We have the ocean around us. Our land is pretty much taken. So why not use the ocean? And as you know, if you go down 1,000 meters, you find deep cold water that's high in nutrients. So you bring the nutrients up with the temperature differential and you start a new kind of system.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about it because you remember for this discussion, you are king. You can make the ultimate decision.
As king for the day,
Yeah, okay. For the hour, anyway.
we must find a billionaire. It could be Larry Ellison because he
Could
likes
be.
to shit. He won the America's Cup recently.
He has a plane. He's fine.
We also have 3 or 4 billionaires associated with Hawaii. It's not going to be government. It's not going to be companies. It's not going to be you. It's not going to be me. It's going to have to take a very rich group of people to pull this off. And what better legacy than to have a system that is natural, it's sustainable, it produces a range of co-products and various energy forms, and at the same time maybe to remediate global warming and reducing hurricane formation. Because you would place these platforms at the warmest spot of the ocean, you want a temperature differential, which means that you can perhaps minimize the formation.
Is this the Alfred Yee project?
Alfred G was part of our
Is that right?
consultant.
Oh, no kidding.
He and Hans Kroc. I don't know if you know
Hans Kroc, sure, many times.
Hans has one concept. Lockheed Martin has, sad to say, basically abandoned Hawaii because they found a customer in China. So their first 5 to 10 megawatt system is going to be built probably somewhere in Chinese waters.
So who's running the OTEC laboratory in
Well,
Delhi
the
now?
laboratory remains important. And,
Is that Lockheed
and
Martin
useful.
still or somebody else?
Lockheed Martin was never running the site. What it was a Hawaii operation that served as host for people who wanted to come in to do research and to start companies. And if you've been to NELHA at all, you know there are 20 plus companies there actually making money. Now, some of the activities include using reverse osmosis to get fresh water that can be sold in Japan, and for a factor of 10 more than normal water. Yeah. But there's a market for it.
But there's an OTEC research facility there. Last time I looked, it's mostly in materials science.
True.
They're supposed to be they're in fact the biggest single research facility in the state for sure on things having to do with OTEC. They're remaining, because there used to be a big ship out there, do you remember?
Well, the Mini-OTEC was the one that first did it. Lockheed actually did that. And
but let's go back to you as king.
Okay.
And don't worry about the Capitol.
Yep.
As king, you can control the Capitol.
I'm going to command Larry Ellison and these people to come up with that.
It's great to be king.
And, you know,
Mel Brooks said that.
The Blue Revolution Planship. And by the way, Jay, Leighton Chung and Benny Ron University and Patent Attorney will be here soon to bring you up to date on what they're doing. But I'm sort of like a cheerleader, and there are other people putting together the package. And
I know you are, and that's why it's so refreshing to make you king.
At some point, they will feel like they're ready to come and share with the public the hopes and promises of something called the Blue Revolution. Right now, it's just a dream.
Yeah.
It's a dream.
Well, they've talked about it. We'll take another break. That's Patrick Takahashi, Director Emeritus of HNEI, Hawaii National Energy Institute, here on Think Tech Talks. Hawaii, the state of clean energy. Are we on the right track to reach our goals in clean energy? Serious question. We'll be right back after this break. Aloha, I'm Jay Fidel. This is Think Tech Hawaii, broadcasting live from the Pioneer Plaza in downtown Honolulu. We raise public awareness about tech, energy, and globalism in Hawaii. Technology is critical to our state. A vibrant tech sector will give us new prospects in the global marketplace and will offer great careers and make our economy more resilient. Streaming live on Ustream and Spreaker, ThinkTech allows its hosts and guests invaluable opportunities to report important events and discuss important questions, and to be heard here in Hawaii and around the world. You can find links to our live streams on thinktechhawaii.com or on our mobile website, m.thinktechhawaii.com. And you can see our archive on YouTube. It's all just a click away. We want to do whatever we can to keep Hawaii relevant, connected, and thriving in the complexity of the 21st century. We hope you will help us in those efforts. Tune in today. This is Think Tech. I'm Jay Fidel.
Are we? And
okay, we're back. We're live. We're Think Tech Talks. Hawaii, the state of clean energy. Is Hawaii on the right track to achieve its goals in clean energy? With Dr. Patrick Takahashi, Director Emeritus of HNEI, a very important organization. And we made him king for today, so he's really, he's empowered. And Sharon wanted to follow on that track and sort of drill down with him on what he would do as king.
that's right. I think that's great to have these great lofty ideas, and then but let's get back to where are we as a state and what can we do? Are we on that right track? And what if not, or if so, where is the next step? Are we going in the right pathway, or do we need to do something else? I think you mentioned transportation, and we're not doing anything there. But you said, well, we can't do anything about the airlines, but what can we do? I mean, what is possible for us to be much more self-sufficient?
Let me say that you, particularly with your Hawaii Forum, MG Forum, Jay, with everything you're doing, the state legislature, the governor, the small companies, big companies, they're doing as best they can. And here's the problem. I mean, it's not really a solution, but it's a problem that we should at least appreciate. When I worked in Congress for 3 years, some things made it and some things didn't make it. It turns out that there are organizations called lobbyists that have a very important role to play in all of this. And there are priorities, as we talked about, in our society that outweigh an energy problem. And we as a society, and we in Hawaii, have made the decision that energy, it's important, but it's not that important enough to put aside our tax monies to spend on it. And the worst thing we can do, I think, is, for example, to give so many incentives to all the renewables by taking our tax monies, let's say 50% of it, and make sure that all these energies become competitive right away. That's not smart, because many of these technologies are just not ready. Solar photovoltaic electricity today is twice the cost of wind power, which is still expenses enough at 6 to 8 cents a kilowatt hour that it doesn't compete well with natural gas fired turbines. Old nuclear plants and old coal plants can do it for 3-4 cents a kilowatt hour. You just can't compete. So you can't put your assets into something that's non-competitive. That makes no sense at all. But what you can do is, if global climate change is real, and I think it is, but unfortunately the leaders of our country are waffling on this subject. Unless something traumatic and dramatic happens, I do not see Hawaii or the nation or the world doing much more than what we're doing today, which is the best we can do with electricity, because we have set the priorities. This is why our education system is somewhat suspect, and that's because we say we want the best possible for our children. We don't put money there. We just have come to the point where we have allowed the best 5% of our graduates in college to run the country, which is not all that bad, because you need followers anyway.
Is it the top 5% or the bottom?
Well, hopefully it's not. It could well be for nefarious purposes, not the top 5%. But the point is, are we on track? Yes, we're on track, because the system has put us into the track. There's nothing else we could have done.
Okay, but wait, specific questions now. You're king. Do we collectively put more money into OTEC? Do we push to develop? Is OTEC that good in the theory of it?
Okay, let me address this in a wider forum. But basically, I'm king, or I'm the benevolent dictator for the world. And I will
You don't have to be benevolent. You can do anything you want. It's great to be king.
Decisions and have a good reason for it.
I'll be God and everything else. Effectively, it's this. Yes, I can dictate what the future would be, and what I would do is to outlaw wars. $3 trillion was spent in the Middle East 12-year war period. $3 trillion. Now, sure,
wait till you see what happens in Ukraine.
Well, yeah, we'll come to that. But can you imagine if these $3 trillion were instead spent on OTEC and global warming and solar photovoltaics and wind power and undersea cables to connect the islands and the world, for all that matters? Well, what happened? We spent the money for war. Today, if you watch television, you see that because of Ukraine, the Congress is saying, wait a minute, President Obama, you cannot cut the defense budget. The United States has to be supreme. To cut our army by 100,000 people, this is you're killing the future of the world. No, we're not. Ukraine will not lead to a third world war. China has no interest in taking over the United States. Our defense budget right now, and it's been that way for the past 10, 20 years, is 6 times what China is. We have no enemy into the foreseeable future. Yeah, you want to posture, but if I were this person who can dictate the future, I would shift money from war to
OTEC.
Peace. OTEC could be important, but I will not determine that. I can make a case for it by saying that we have all of these externalities. Plus, you can avoid global warming by remediating the process. And so a case can be made for OTEC, but stronger cases might be made for other options. And in any case, I suspect, because of the fact that renewables are dispersed, you cannot depend on any one source. The only
What about geothermal? If you were king, would you say, okay, enough of this restraint, let's go to a couple of 100 megawatts right now. You guys have it, open the spigot, let's see some real geothermal here.
Well, remember in the 80s, we had this Pirelli undersea cable project because someone at the university, and it wasn't me, said that you could get 500 megawatts of geothermal from just the Puno side of the Big Island. And money was spent to design this cable, which they are now rethinking, and I think should be done, even though the ratepayer is going to pay for it.
Are you thinking that in your scientific capacity or your monarchical capacity?
Both.
Both.
I mean, they both make sense. In any case.
I want to just go back to, you were talking about a cable and connecting the islands, but you said that way back when you were at HNEI, that there were studies of the sustainability island by island. What were the results of that study, and how does that play in? Should we go to cable and connect up, or are each of the islands sustainable unto themselves? What were your findings?
No. Connecting islands made sense from the beginning, and that's because renewables are dispersed, and you might have wind at one site and not at the other. So you want to have a balanced statewide grid, because one island will be affected by clouds and winds and whatever forces. A statewide grid makes sense, especially if you can do it for less than $2 billion. It's going to cost at least $1 billion. And Kauai is a problem right now because the depths go down to 10,000 feet, which is test sea. And latest incarnation of this concept is that even the Big Island is not being considered right now. It's only Oahu and Maui County. I think all islands should somehow be in place. But who knows, someday, maybe, there could be microwave power, that could be effective.
Ooh, interesting idea.
Yeah, because, for example...
You don't want to get in the way, though.
True. but I used to work with a guy, not work with, but talk to and communicate with a guy called Peter Glazer. He was the one who was in charge, kind of nationally, by hosting meetings of solar power plants in space. And so we interacted quite a bit, and he had a microwave concept that would beam the power from space back to Earth, and he said...
vice versa, right?
Well...
You beam it up and then it beams down somewhere else?
No, you put these subtle photovoltaic panels up there in space, and then you convert the sunlight by a beam down to Earth. And he said there was a way to do it safely. I wondered how he would do it.
Don't get in the way.
But he said it was possible. And who's to say it was not impossible? Not possible when he said it was possible.
I think Dr. No was working on this too.
Well, the Japanese are now the lead for this
Really?
project. They are actually seriously looking at this concept. Very expensive yet. And anything you put in space, to me, is kind of a shame. And in fact, in my blog, I keep deprecating what what NASA is doing about their projects, because there is no way, no matter what some of our billionaires say, that we'll want to go to Mars or some other extrasolar planet to live for at least another millennium. It's going to happen someday. But today is not the day to spend on space. Today is the day to spend on sustainability on planet Earth. And the ocean is one totally untapped source right now. And there's the sun, right?
Would you keep doing PV on rooftops the way it's happening?
Well, see,
mind you, it's declining in
no,
Hawaii.
it's declining only because of the fact that Hawaiian Electric can handle so much.
Yeah.
But right now, you can put in a solar PV system easily for less than 20 cents a kilowatt hour. And some people even say 12 cents a kilowatt hour. We pay 36 cents a kilowatt hour. So of course, put in as much PV as you can. But the problem, and I can empathize with Hawaiian Electric, is that
Their grid.
There's a danger in having this energy dispersed too much. They say it's 15%. I think they can take 50%, is my gut feeling, because even though they're dispersed, it's not like they're all going to suddenly cut it off on their own. I mean, so there is some comfort.
But what happens in peak hours when the sun's down, there's no PV?
Yeah, but this is where Hawaiian Electric got to have these fast-acting turbines. Now, someday they might actually run on
something
on
other than
LPG, maybe, which is another issue. I mean, do we want to pay the $1 billion to build the infrastructure for LPG? And LPG is at least
You mean
twice.
LNG?
LNG.
Well, LPG. I mean,
Liquefied what?
LNG is
Natural.
let's call both liquefied natural gas and liquefied petroleum gas.
Okay.
One is methane and one is propane.
Okay.
They're both in the same box.
Yeah.
They're both twice as expensive as methane.
Yeah.
And delivered is going to be more than that, actually. And then the price is unknown into the future. And when it comes to LNG, fracking is creating much of this new gas.
Yeah. And
Fracking is
controversy.
really an unknown right now. And in this book, I think in the last chapter,
This one.
that's
the book.
It's entitled The Venus Syndrome. And you know what the Venus Syndrome is? I figured all my life of trying to use compelling arguments to convince the public that renewable energy is good hasn't worked. So what about fear? And so that chapter has to do with methane. It turns out that the methane that's natural gas largely is a lot more dangerous than we think. And if you look at all the resources, coal, natural gas, and oil, there's twice as much energy in methane encased in ice in the bottom of the ocean, twice as much than all of the coal, oil, and natural gas. And therefore, this is the resource. It's spread out, so you can't really mine it, although Japan is trying. It's spread out, but it's also located all around the Ring of Fire. And so it occurred to me, gee, why don't I come up with a novel that has a Ring of Fire volcanically and earthquakingly jiggering around at one time, so that much of this methane is brought to the surface. One molecule of methane that immediately gets set in the atmosphere is 75 times more dangerous than one molecule of carbon
How
dioxide.
dangerous? I mean,
75 times
what is
more.
what is the nature of that danger?
Because it creates global warming.
Ah,
75 times worse than a molecule of carbon dioxide. Now, they say the average life of this methane is a factor of 20 more only, but depends on how long it's been in the atmosphere, because methane it oxidizes and turns to carbon dioxide over time. But the Venus syndrome is looking at planet Venus. The atmosphere is carbon dioxide. The atmosphere is carbon
in this
dioxide.
book.
The temperature is close to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And do we want our planet Earth to someday become planet Venus because of methane? And mind you, if the cause is this release of all this iced methane from the ocean, there's nothing we can do, right? But just to get people thinking about global warming, I thought I'd write a novel someday based on that chapter called The Venus Syndrome. Do I have a solution for it? By the time I write the book, I will, but right now I don't.
you know, one thing about you, Patrick, is you are in constant motion. Your blog. Can you give your address for the blog?
Well, sure. It's HTTP, that stuff. Planet Earth and Humanity. That's one word. .blogspot.com.
Okay.
In any case, just go to Google, type in Pat Takahashi, Patrick Takahashi, and put in almost anything, and it'll get you to my site.
Okay.
or get you
There are
tonight.
very interesting thoughts.
My
very
Huffington
interesting-
Post article.
It's all about ideas and provocations. It's all about reaching out to every point of science and trying to make some sense out of where we
So I want to
are.
bring Patrick back to the real world. So take all your ideas, Patrick, and now you're no longer emperor or king.
Mm-hmm.
Now go back to what will Patrick Takahashi do to get at least a little of your ideas out into the real world to help us move a little bit further along
And cheer up, we have 1 minute for this
Oh, 1
discussion.
minute. Oh,
And
1 minute.
here's
All
what
right, in 1 minute.
here's what this retired soul would do. I would do everything possible to find that billionaire or two or three to fund the first Blue Revolution platform, which is going to cost $1.5 billion. That's what I would like to do.
Where will it be?
It'll be in Hawaii Easy.
I mean, around Hawaii, somewhere in the water. around
we want it
Hawaii.
to be in Hawaii. The ideal place to put it, unfortunately, is in the equator because hurricanes don't cross the equator. Someday, all of these platforms will be the equator because it's safe. In Hawaii, you have to contend with the.
We have to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
There's some, you know what I've learned from this discussion, and I really appreciate you coming down, is the possibilities are unlimited, and that we have possibilities we really haven't fully investigated, discovered, and we have to find new structures. Maybe it's something about being king and emperor. We have to find new structures in order to make them happen, because our existing structures are just unable to embrace these new ideas.
And I've always thought the benevolent dictator was the ideal form of government. As we were talking, as screwed up as our country might be today or how broken our government is, we are still the best country ever in the history of humanity. We are supreme. We'll be supreme for the next century at least, I think. We're doing the best we can. It's not satisfactory, but I don't know how we can change it. I don't know how we can change it.
Okay, well, that's Patrick Takahashi, Director Emeritus of HNEI, a man who drives on the potholes just like the rest of us.
But thinks above us.
No, I have a hydrogen dirigible, so I avoid potholes.
Here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy, is Hawaii on the right track to reach its goal in clean energy? Thank you, Sharon Moriwaki.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Patrick.
Jack.
It's great to have
Thank
you
you,
here.
Sharon, and I'm glad to finally be here.
Okay, well, we'll have to have you back again
Aloha.
soon. Aloha, everybody.